Hello, everyone. What a treat to be here and to have enjoyed this conference. It's just been amazing, absolutely amazing. Glenn, just credit to you and the whole staff, Mary Carmen and the board and everybody. I haven't been able to catch all of it, but almost all of it, and I'm just blown away and hope to be able to go back and pick up on some of the recording of it. So to pull this off when we can't get together in person has been a real challenge, and you guys have done a phenomenal job. So we're getting ready for the very last session, and it's my privilege to introduce it. My name is Chick Dombach. And there's one mistake on the slide. I was a volunteer in Colombia rather than Ethiopia. The years are right, but I've done a fair amount of work in Ethiopia since then, and I think I'm fairly well known among a lot of people for the work in Ethiopia. So you're forgiven for putting that in there. I had Glenn's job back in the 1990s, and the NPCA has been kind enough to give me the title that I'm just so proud of, President Emeritus of the National Peace Corps Association. I am here to introduce our keynote speaker at the end of the conference. I met Jerry Glenn 25 years ago when he and I were invited by the government of Taiwan to visit that island semi-state. As you may know, Taiwan is in the agreement that the U.S. has with the mainland. U.S. government officials don't have official meetings with people from Taiwan. It's just one of the quirks of international relations. So the island state of Taiwan brings people who they think are influential, but not part of the government, to Taiwan to meet with them and learn more about them. Jerry and I were privileged to be invited on one of these trips 25 years ago. I didn't know him before then, but I have to say it was a phenomenal trip. But one of the real highlights was getting to know Jerry Glenn. Jerry was a Peace Corps volunteer in Malawi at the same time I was in Colombia, but he has become one of the world's great thinkers and leaders. He is what we call a futurist, and he runs something called he's executive director of something called the Millennium Project, that does analysis of what's happening in the world and what we can anticipate happening in the world. He has a whole network of top global experts who pool their thinking on this, produce a book every year called State of the Future. And I think I have every one of them. I have State of the Future edition 19 and 19.2, and I look forward to getting edition 20 whenever it comes out, Jerry. I highly recommend to all of you that you get the State of the Future books to see what is happening and what we can anticipate happening around the world. Given that in this 60th year and with the volunteers being home, we're kind of taking a fresh look at where the Peace Corps is and what's going to happen in the future. And it occurred to me that since we're doing that we ought to bring in one of the world's premier futurists, who is a part of our community, to share with us his perspective on the world and where the world is going and what that means for the Peace Corps and the Peace Corps community. So with that, let me introduce my good friend, Jerry Glenn, and let's hear what he has to say. Jerry?
Thank you, Chick. It's very nice to be here. I will get this little fella going here. Let's see if I get this right. Aha, all right. I want to make 3 suggestions for the future of the Peace Corps. When the Peace Corps was created, there wasn't any internet. Now we have telehealth and teleeducation, telecommerce, even teledating. Why not a Peace Corps edition here? The first approach could be a Peace Corps volunteer itself, or themselves. This could be people who would be in the United States, and for whatever reason they can't go, maybe they're handicapped or whatever the situation is, but they could work remotely with their counterparts overseas. A televolunteer can also be a former Peace Corps volunteer who may have had great experiences since they have been in the Peace Corps and have new skills to share with the country that they know and love. And they don't have to go through a lot of orientation like new volunteers would have to go through. So we could have previous volunteers as well as new volunteers assisting countries through the internet. We're still getting used to this medium as a culture, but eventually people will get the idea that you could have a dinner with people in the village. Somebody with a cell phone in the village area hooked up to the thing, and we can really, really use this medium much more than we have in the past. That's the idea of a televolunteer. And if we'd had televolunteers before the pandemic, we'd still be engaged around the world. We wouldn't have had, 7,000 came back, but we could have had many of them still engaged. Such Peace Corps volunteers could obviously teach English, help with pronunciation and science, mathematics, or advise on export products, all of the above things that we think about in development. Now, special care would have to be taken on the cultural encounter with such televolunteers, because obviously when you're in a village, you're much more aware of things than if you're in New York. So that's a bug in the idea that has to be worked out. A second one are tech volunteers. These would be just like we have teacher volunteers and health volunteers and all kinds of environmental volunteers. These volunteers would actually be in the country. They wouldn't be in the United States. They would physically go there like other volunteers. But their job would be to take a look at the whole leapfrogging. We have been talking about leapfrogging for development for over 50 years. I have not seen a leapfrog program. I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, we sort of think about it, but we ought to be deliberate about it. And I like the idea of Peace Corps volunteers hanging out in the village, getting used to people, and then saying, this leapfrog could work. This leapfrog, it won't work. Rather than somebody in the United States saying, here, use this new technology. Let's think about this. Let's hang out with people. Let's talk of what are possibilities for leapfrogging and invent together these programs. We would try to know clearly where it would work, where it wouldn't work, what would be appropriate, and it's sort of the Peace Corps sharing together with people the idea. In addition to working with host country communities, tech volunteers could also be available to help other Peace Corps volunteers in their ability to leapfrog. How can future forms of education work with an education volunteer? Same with health, agriculture, and so forth. So they could be a tech resource for the country. Technological change is rapidly accelerating. We know this. And for example, the next 5 years of change will be more than the last 10 or 15 because the acceleration is occurring. And which means that the development gap keeps getting wider in a lot of these areas. So we need leapfrogging to be taken more seriously than we talk about it in the past. Now, I want to give you a couple of quick examples. Here's one, seawater agriculture. We know the world is getting more salty. We also know that the sea levels are going up. This means that countries like Bangladesh agriculture will get wiped out relatively fast as it comes in. And this is a real nightmare for looking at the food requirements, especially in Asia coming up for the population. But if you can't beat them, join them. So that's where saltwater agriculture comes in. There's a lot of things that can grow in saltwater. And there's going to be more on this coming up. There's research going on in China and the United States as well. And we're trying to figure out how we can shift freshwater agriculture to saltwater agriculture as much as possible. Well, that requires a lot of high-tech science understanding of this change. And that's one of the things that Peace Corps volunteers could work on. Another one is tree planting. Everybody knows Haiti's got a terrible situation with not enough trees. Well, and I've been involved in some of the work in Haiti before, and I don't know of any tree planting program that has really made much of a difference. This could make a difference. Drones can fire thousands of seed pods over a course of a day, and full trees. You're gonna have a tree and like a little pellet through everything, like a bullet, but not a bullet to kill somebody, a bullet to make life. So they can load these things up, and it's a whole mountainside, especially this is great for Haiti, a whole mountainside that you can't get to very easily could be done in a short period of time. Drones to plant 10,000 trees in a day. Repeat, 10,000 trees in a day. You can't do this with regular approaches. And we really got to get this tree planting done fast. And this is a kind of example of a leapfrogging approach. We're not even doing this much in the United States yet, but there's a good example of the leapfrogging. Another one is that the cost of putting up the satellites have already been done. The software for understanding what water should be done where, and so for what we call smart agriculture has been done. So to a large degree, it's knowledge transfer and transceivers on the ground. So it's not as big a deal as it looks like to help Africa and other places get up to snuff on high tech support for local farmers. And that's a perfect example of kind of the thing a tech volunteer could help with other agriculture volunteers. There's also a thing called a global warning. It's called the X Prize. It's a long story. I'm trying to make it simple. They give an award on this particular one in different areas, but this one was in education. And the idea was you want to find out why you don't have to spend 10, 15 years to teach people how to read, write, and do numeral and mathematical skills. Can't that be shortened? And there's not enough teachers around, and there's not enough, what can we do as an alternative? So the X Prize has been awarded to 10 players, 10, and it's been narrowed down to like 2 at this point. But they would, I'm sure, would love to work in cooperation with the Peace Corps to have the idea of children without teachers and without education at all involved. You just make the little device and the kids play with it and they teach themselves. And it's already been proven that you can teach people to read in the local languages and to do some mathematical skills and want to interact on these devices. So it's proven technology, but it's very advanced in the sense of another leapfrogging. There's 3 more simple examples. We know that making concrete is a horribly polluting process, especially of CO2. And we know that you're going to have a lot of population growth in Africa and Asia coming up. And that means a lot of construction coming up. And that means a lot of concrete coming up, which means a whole lot more CO2 pollution than people are calculating on. So a way around this is that you can take the CO2 out of current plants in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and you can compress it into a material through a chemical process where you're producing concrete-like material. So you get 2 advantages. One, you're not producing CO2 from the normal concrete production process, and you're taking CO2 that would be in there out of the air. So it's a twofer. It's very good. The one in the middle there it's actually an antique. It's over 5 to 8 years old. The guy at MIT just rigged this together. Says, with real-time solar electricity, and you can move around a person. And of course, teleeducation has been talked about all over to help the third world, but it's not going as fast as it should. We can really, make some changes on that one. A third and last one is the teleorganizations. Businesses, universities, and national research labs, we talked about this in the previous workshops before. We want to create partnerships with a wider array of players. So let's say that you are bringing in some high-tech software learning system or agricultural system, whatever, but maybe Intel or Microsoft or one of the other producers of this stuff would like to be one of the teleorganizations to support the tech volunteer in the field, to make like a partnership. Maybe the national research labs are coming up with some new stuff. It would be very good for development, but a lot of people don't know about these things in the United States, let alone in the third world. Research labs could be tasked to say, what are you doing that could go to the Peace Corps and sort of do some collaborations and to get your tax dollars at double at work. Tech volunteers might need advanced tech support. They might start working on something and they don't know the next step. So then some of these tele-organizations can be part of that, or universities, as I mentioned. So similar to a tele-volunteer working with their host counterpart, they might need to know which tele-learning programs work the best to teach algebra. Well, the various software companies doing this stuff, they know what works best because they've been testing these things out for some time and can collaborate. Tele-Peace Corps volunteers could work with environmental and tech volunteers in country and tele-organizations to implement climate change strategies. And we know that climate change is a complex deal to deal with. So what alternative energy systems, plant-based or cell-based meat production can be done worldwide. And third world, that's a big leapfrog right there. The world is moving to the alternatives of meat because we know the agriculture is a big impact on climate change. And we do have to change agriculture and meat production. So why not do a leapfrog on this with third world countries? And last, this is a little technique to assess a leapfrog. Let's say you take a certain idea or a technology, but you want to think about, is it a good idea? Well, what are the primary consequences? If we do this, what happens with it? What happens next? What are the implications? And then what are the secondary implications? And what are the tertiary implications? Because when most people don't look at the secondary or certainly not the tertiary. But the Peace Corps volunteers can sit with host country counterparts and villagers and say, let's think together. If we do this, what'll happen next? What'll happen next? Because you want to avoid some mistakes that have been made in the past. And this can help do that sort of assessment. So I thank you very much. And I hope that the Peace Corps will take these tele-ideas into account because we didn't have this capability when we began the Peace Corps, but now we have this ability. Let's see, I'm gonna stop sharing. I think I've stopped sharing. Okay, well, I thank you very much.